our rep here for the evening, a community evening visit, where she'll have an opportunity to share with us what's happening and also take questions and answers. I know that Denise Garlick needs no introduction. I know all of you are familiar. We are so blessed. She reps District 13, which is a very great district. It is Needham, Dover, and Medfield towns. You are a resident, Denise, in Needham. And Denise has been served in many different capacities. I know that in a prior life you were a nurse and raised your family in Needham, and then went on and did exactly what I'm doing, Board of Selectmen. And prior to that, I think Board of Health, you were chair of the Board of Health. And so lots of volunteering, lots of work in the community and building the community. And then in 2010, Denise was elected to the House of Representatives in Massachusetts. And I have a great sense of, we share a friend in common, Pat Haddad, who is, I believe, co-chair with you on education, or has in the past, or she's the seat of Oh, okay. But you work together in terms of education. And I know you've worked in elder care and medical billing and all of the different ones. Right now you're chairing the Committee on Substance Abuse, Mental Health, Substance Abuse and Recovery, which is so critically important as our communities are struggling with the opioid epidemic as well as everything else that's happening. So I will hope that you share a little bit of that and whatever else is going on. But I want you all, I hope you will help me welcome Denise Garlick to come to Dover. It's a privilege to have her tonight. They're going on to Medfield Thursday night for a community evening. But we are proud of the group that has come out this evening and so delighted to have you. Thank you very much.
That is a warm and wonderful welcome. Can you hear the mic now? Okay. So I thank you very much, Candace. And I thank everyone who has come out tonight. There are many elected people in the room and the volunteers of Dover and the concerned citizens. And I thank Dover Sherman Cable Television, who will bring our stories and this presentation to people's homes as well. So I wanted to just set the table a little bit for us tonight. We had a brief reception and I had a chance to touch base again with make new friendships and renew friendships that we have. So I wish everybody a warm and wonderful, healthy and happy new year. I will speak to you for a half an hour, and Candace and I were discussing how important it is to start when you say you're going to start and stop when you're going to stop. Ann Weinstein, who is sitting here in the front, is a timekeeper for us. And at 30 minutes from the moment I have started talking, I will stop, whether I am done or not. And we will move to the question and answer period. The purpose of this evening is, as your state representative, you have sent me to do a job. And very simply, I am here to report back to you. And I want to talk to you about the issues of how the legislation and budget was seen in 2017, how we look forward to 2018. I'm hoping to discuss with you a little bit my work on the Mental Health and Substance Use and Recovery Committee as well. So let me begin very simply and let you know how I think about the work that I'm doing. So as Candace was kind enough to say to you, you may recall that I was elected in 2010. And since that time, I have served, and this is what Candace was thinking about when she was speaking about Speaker Pro Tem Haddad. I served in my second term as the Vice Chair of the Joint Education Committee on Education. Very, very important value in the district that I represent. I then served in my third term as the Chairman of the Joint Committee on Elder Affairs. Again, a very strong value for the people that I serve, and did that work across the Commonwealth. And presently, in my fourth term, I am the chairman of the Joint Committee on Mental Health and Substance Use and Recovery. I also serve on the Council of State Governments, which is a nationwide collaboration of all state governments, and I am the chair of their Health Public Policy Committee, and I am also on the board of Mass Caucus of Women Legislators. I say that to you so that you can see kind of the broad picture. What you need to know and what I'm sure is most important to you is that I represent 40,000 people in Needham, Dover, and Precinct 1 and 2 in Medfield. That's all the children, adults, families, seniors, veterans in that area. And those voices are the most important voices that I hear. Geographically, when we look at this, by law, a representative has to represent about 40,000 people in lands that are contiguous to each other by land or water. So in Needham, Dover, and Medfield, we've met that criteria. And not only do I hear the voices of the constituents, but I see the municipalities, the towns themselves, as my constituents. And I partner with many community groups and advocacy groups within this area. And I'm working to include all 3 towns. We had a mental health and substance forum in Needham that we posted all of the notices in Dover and Medfield as well. And as many times as I'm looking at state resources that we can maximize that money for the district, I really strive to do that. I'm talking about our team, but before I talk about our team, I just wanted to take a moment because my family is here as well. And my daughter Monica is here, and my daughter Beth is here, and our family's dear friend Charlotte is here as well. So there isn't much I do that it doesn't become a family affair. And I'm sure fortunately and unfortunately for my 4 children, usually when I'm working, we're all working. So I thank you very much for being here. This is a picture of my team, and for those of you who can remember when I first started as a representative, it was me and 1 legislative aide. I now have, because of virtue of more responsibility, I have more staff. Ann Weinstein is here right in the very front, and she's my district director. Laura Coantro is in the back, and she's my legislative aide. These are the people that the people of Dover most often interact with. And Barry Hawk is here, and he is legal counsel for the Joint Committee on Mental Health and Substance Use that also comes under my purview. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the summer interns, just because in this day and age when we are talking about how young people view government and the messages that they're getting, I am deeply committed to the summer intern program. We plan for it all year long. I only take individuals from the district. The individuals who come actually come with an issue that they want to work on, that they research, and they have to report to the entire staff. At the end of their tenure, they also do much of the work that is assigned to them, and they attend the speakers series, which is an entire series of speakers from everyone from the governor and the attorney general to other legislators and heads of agencies who come to speak to the interns twice a week. And I believe this is one of the best things that I can do to involve young people in government. For many of these young people, this will be their only interaction in state government, behind the doors to see how it actually works. So we reflect to them as a staff very consciously our commitment and our integrity in the work that we're doing. And it has been a wonderful experience that I can tell from the letters that are written after my interns finish their service. I put up this triangle for you because this is the way I have always talked to you about how I view my job, and it continues to be that way. And I want you to know at the very top of that triangle are constituent services, and balancing that is both budget and legislation. I have the privilege of representing a very strong district, a very stable district, but it is not a district without individuals that have great needs. And always, that is our top priority, to deal with the calls that come into that office. And there are many stories of your friends and neighbors that you may know or may not know, but oftentimes it is state agencies that may have a solution for them, and we try and facilitate that communication and get results for them. Also, the community connection. I promised I was sure I would show him a picture of himself. I want to say the community connections are very important. You know, there's a gentleman here tonight who received a note from my office on his work and how important it is to knitting together our community and the resources that we have. I do Dover, Sherwood, and cable television shows. We try and communicate through all that social media, the website and the Facebooks, and letters to the editor, so the community connections matter. And listening to your concerns is a vital issue. And you know, in our town, in the past year, and this is not, I want you to know, this is a genuine number. In the past year, session, I should say, I always see these terms of 2 years, it's 2 years for a session. In the last 2 years, from my district alone, we have had 1,000 unique individuals who have contacted the office with a question, a concern, a position, an opposition, all kinds of things related to, often come to legislation, many times related to the state budget and its impact on people, and sometimes around personal issues, often around bigger issues around transportation and infrastructure and those issues as well. But that interaction is important because it shapes the way that I can see the work that lies ahead and where the resources are needed and how we can direct those priorities. The way to support the community. So it's great that those people are contacting the office, and that 1,000 unique individuals contacting the office, that sounds like a really big number. But I represent 40,000 people. So that means there's 39,000 people that I'm not hearing from. So how do I know where they are and who they are and what they care about? And that comes with the community connections. You know, I attend the Dover Memorial Day services. I have visited the Dover Council on Aging. I am very connected and very proud to say this. I'm a mom of 4 young adults now, 2 daughters that I've introduced and 2 sons. And both my sons are Eagle Scouts. And now I am regularly invited to the Eagle Scout ceremonies in the town and meeting the young parents and these young adults, these young men that are being raised up and very important to the town. Those connections matter. All the ways that if you invite me, I will come if at all possible. And I think those are my very best connections and my very best conversations. And I connect with our local officials, and the importance of my relationship with Candace is not only is she an extraordinary woman, and we are so fortunate to have her be the chair of the Board of Selectmen, but I honor and respect those positions and those channels of communication. And so when I say I represent our town, not only is it that I hear these issues and concerns and bring them to the state level, not only do I find the resources and the way the state can be helpful to individuals in the town to bring it home, but I work with the officials so that I understand whether they are elected or volunteer, what the vision is for the town and how to be the most helpful moving forward. There are Dover concerns that we have been a focus of our office. Certainly one is around hydrology, around the water issue. And we have heard from the Board of Selectmen on that and the work that they have done. We're listening to the Board of Health. We're trying to learn as much as possible, and we have attended the sessions that have been held in this town around that issue. And when the town decides, if and when the town decides that they want to move forward on this issue through the Board of Selectmen, we will be ready, willing, and able to do that. Another issue very important to the town of Dover has been around Lyme disease. And you may know that your friends and neighbors have struggled with this in their personal lives, but they have been leaders on the state level. The Board of Health in Dover is a leader, not just in my district, but in the Commonwealth on the issue of Lyme disease. And many individuals have led the way. I had an intern, a young intern from Dover, who did his entire research project on Lyme disease. And then we took some of that research when I was working on actual legislation related to Lyme disease. So that's very important. So our work on Lyme disease actually led, and with this intern's input actually, led to my very strong position on being able to support an amendment that the long-term use of antibiotics for Lyme disease would be paid for by insurance company once they were prescribed by a physician. That actually was not happening. The insurance companies were blocking long-term use. And because I am a nurse, and not in a prior life, but still and always, you know, my voice was very valuable to my colleagues as we were moving on that issue. And it was my sense of what the people of Dover and the rest of my district needed. And the issue of recreational marijuana, I actually represent a district in which all 3 towns voted against recreational marijuana. And so I am very clear, although it was a slim margin, I am very clear to protect the local autonomy as we move forward on how the regulations will be implemented. And I want to be sure that the people of the towns that I represent have a say on how the regulations are going to be implemented. The one thing I always want to take a minute, particularly, this seems to be a particularly dark night, and it's rainy and it's cold, but I want to remind people about how very strong Massachusetts is, and all the light that Massachusetts is bringing, not only in this Commonwealth, but to the nation. Massachusetts continues to be #1 in public education in the nation. We are #1 in veteran services and the benefits in the nation. We don't have the largest number of veterans. We have the most respected and cared for veterans as they return home to Massachusetts. We are #1 in life sciences in the nation, and we are #1 through research on our energy efficiency and the number of jobs that went with that as well. And we are also #1 in our unemployment rate. Our unemployment rate in 2017 was 3.2%. There is so much that we can be proud of in Massachusetts about what we're doing and how we're doing it. And I hope that you feel that as you think about other things that are happening in the nation, we are strong and we are steady and we are moving forward in Massachusetts. Having said this, let's talk about public transportation for a moment. So I want you to know that this is an issue that I work on a consistent basis. I work on this with my staff, and we have developed strong relationships with the MBTA and with Keolis, and recently had a particularly effective meeting. So I'm not telling you that the commuter rail in Needham is perfect. I'm telling you we are watching it every single day. I get the alerts on my phone. We are in contact when things aren't running well. We are carefully monitoring the schedule on that. And one of the things that I'm concerned that the people of Dover may be feeling the impact of is if I want to meet people in Dover at 6 o'clock in the morning, I go down to the Needham Junction station where the MBTA is. And presently, the private owner of the parking lot that was leasing to the MBTA is now leasing to the local hospital. That means it's getting more difficult to find parking spaces down at the junction. In this meeting that we recently had in the transportation building, we are talking about a creative way we may be able to mobilize more parking spaces down in that area. And until then, there's going to be a great deal of vigilance around ensuring that people can park in that area. We're asking for that parking lot area opposite Roach Brothers to be restriped and see if it can be re-engineered a little bit. And this is a top priority. We want people to use public transportation. We have to make sure that they can leave their car someplace so they can get on the train. The other thing around this new laws is the laws that have currently been passed. And I want to share with you that what is here is certainly the access law, and this is an act advancing contraceptive coverage and economic security in our state. This law was in response to the administration, the federal administration, that is putting great constraints around payment for any birth control or family planning services at this time. And Massachusetts wanted to ensure that those services would have payment, and we would continue on supporting women in the Commonwealth. The act to ensure access to marijuana, that's what the final bill was. We had the referendum, and people voted for the referendum. But then that came back to the legislature, and there was a great deal of work around how that could actually be implemented, what were the unintended consequences in the language, how we could anticipate that, and how we could fix that. You may hear that it seems that the legislature isn't passing a lot of major bills. I would tell you that more than 6,000 bills were filed in the 2017-18 cycle, more than 6,000 bills. Of those 6,000 bills, already I have had more than 300 votes, more than 118 bills have passed. They're not all big bills. A lot of bills were around land takings, they were around home rule petitions, they were around establishing sick banks. They're not big issues. These were the big issues, and the issue related to access to marijuana took months of work by not just a few people, but by many, many people, and took up a lot of that energy in the legislature. The other issue that has taken up a tremendous amount of energy and focus, and appropriately so, is the criminal justice bill. And that has been voted on in the House and the Senate, and is now in the conference committee. And you might know that's the process, right? You've got the House bill, you've got the Senate bill. If they agree, you've got elements of the statute. On the areas where they don't agree, it has to be negotiated. Those two are major, major undertakings that this legislature has taken on. And so we've seen a lot of focus there. I also voted on the bump stock bill, which came to the legislature after the incident in Las Vegas. And essentially, you may know that a bump stock makes a gun an automatic weapon, and it can fire up to 400 to 800 times in a minute. And Massachusetts really took that issue on right away and dealt with that issue. I have met no one, no matter where they see another gun issue, that believes that automatic weapons should be circulating in our towns, in our schools, in our shopping places. I've met no one. So those were kind of the big focuses, and you want us to be thoughtful about big legislation that impacts your life every single day. So I'm kind of stunned when I'm hearing that, there's not enough big laws passed. We don't want a number of big laws passed, we want good laws passed. And so I'm pleased with the work that we've done. And as we move forward on the issues to watch, I'm hoping we'll have some discussion around the Mental Health and Substance Use and Recovery Committee. Our committee has more than 100 bills. We are looking at a major bill that's coming forward that's related to the opioid issue, or as members of my committee are becoming more aware, is really a polysubstance issue and how to look at that. We'll continue, always healthcare is on the agenda for the legislature and for probably every single person in this room. We're talking about income inequality. You might hear recently in the news this regulation of short-term rentals, which is around Airbnb, and that's a very interesting discussion because the industry itself is asking for a tax. So we'll see how all of that goes. The sponsored legislation that I have, and I just have to turn here for a moment because we've highlighted this. So I have filed, when you file the bill, you are the chief sponsor. So I am very careful about the bills I file. I know the bills I file, and I am committed to the bills I file. Sometimes, depending on my colleagues, for reasons of their own, and I don't judge what their reasons are, but they might be asked to file a bill and they will file it on behalf of someone else. But I am very careful about what I do. It's my personality. I'm deliberate about it. I want to be thoughtful about it, and I want to be able to stand up and defend what I've done. So I have only filed 23 bills. The other thing that a person in my position as a legislator does is co-sponsors bills. And that's when you look at bills and then you say, yes, I'm not the chief on this, I'm not the captain of that team, but I want to be on that team. And I actually have an arbitrary number where I don't want to co-sponsor more than 100 bills, because I don't want to be standing in Roach Brothers and have you say, thank goodness you co-sponsored that bill, what's happening with it? And I'm like, what bill? I'm not going to do that to you. I'm very careful about the bills that I co-sponsor and how I can do that. So I actually have an entire matrix when I'm looking at over 6,000 bills about being sure that the issues that are important to my constituents, education and the environment and energy and transportation and public health and public safety, that I have found a bill that I think epitomizes those concerns, and I co-sponsor that. But the bills that I sponsor myself, this, and after I looked at the reimbursement of school care, I wanted to highlight it to you because it's one of the ways I do my work. This bill actually generated through the work of the superintendent of schools in Needham and with his finance department. He then brought in the superintendent of schools in Medfield and I'm very glad to meet him, the new superintendent of schools in Dover, Sherburne area at the high school level. And this bill is a little nuts and bolts bill. This will not get one single person in this room excited. But it is a nuts and bolts bill around procurement and how we could make the system more efficient and allow the schools to move forward in a way without getting lost in red tape. This bill has been warmly greeted by the chair of the Joint Committee on Education and is really a sign of a real partnership. People who are not opposed to each other, are not trying to force each other to do something, but who are recognizing there's a problem, let's kind of fix it, and we could fix it in this way. So I welcome that. An act relative to the emergency stock supply of epinephrine in schools. This came directly from one of your Dover neighbors. There is a doctor in Dover who contacted my office, and his concern, and this might ring a bell with you, was related to the overwhelming price of epinephrine that drug companies were forcing up to $400 per dose of epinephrine. And he had worked very hard, and then he worked with his association, his professional association, on whether we could have language to see if we could have a stock supply of epinephrine in the schools. So we didn't have to have our children carrying epinephrine back and forth, that a family wouldn't have to buy multiple containers of epinephrine. This bill is going to need some work, but like any bill, it takes on average 5 to 11 years for a bill to pass. Unless it's so urgent, like a bump stock bill, right? But if it's not urgent like that, it takes a long time for the bill to pass. This is our first go around with this bill, but there are many people who are very interested in this. And now we have to figure out the real nuances of what would be the cost of this, how can we pay for this, what do we do with expired medication, what do we do with children of the same age and a different weight, need a different dosage, and who would administer that in an emergency. But this bill is homegrown right out of Dover. And that establishing a dentist diversion program also comes from a constituent in my district who lives in Needham. And it is around the substance use issue. For anyone in this room who's ever taken an 18-year-old to have their wisdom teeth out, you know that usually sitting on the counter is an opioid prescription before that tooth is even extracted, and that child's going home with oxycodone, or young adult, 18 years old, young adult, right? That's a real concern about the number of opioids that are circulating in the community. But this is also not only just about that issue, but about the substance use issue of dentists themselves and how we can help professionals deal with their own substance use issue and educate them through the process. And then the skilled care of fragile children in the Commonwealth is a bill around the number of children that we have in the Commonwealth who are so medically complex, who are living in their homes, who need around-the-clock nursing care, and we don't have enough nurses who will work for the money that we're actually paying through the state services right now. And so this bill is around trying to talk about the rate that we're paying these nurses and also to increase the workforce. This bill is in response to a family who lives in the district, but is like many families across the Commonwealth, and I am working with the organization that represents those families. And once again, because I am a nurse, I think it gives authenticity to my ability to sponsor that bill. And then, I just want to go back in. There's the last one on this. We are creating a task force on Massachusetts older adults of all incomes. This was work that came from my committee as I was the chair of Elder Affairs. And this is a very, very important issue to me and continues to be an important issue to me. That in the Commonwealth, we have about 1.4 million seniors. Right? There are a small amount of seniors that the state of Massachusetts actually is able to help and to provide services for. They are usually people at the lowest end of poverty who are so needing and deserving of services. But for all the rest of us, as we are a Commonwealth that is growing older, and because our medical technology is getting better. For many of us, there is no way to predict how long you will live. We want to talk about how well you will live, how you can prepare to live, and what kind of ways the Commonwealth could actually share information that may not be providing services outside of, protecting the integrity of our councils on aging, but would be what kind of information would be available, how can we bring people together. The issues of housing and transportation are huge for older adults in the Commonwealth. And this idea of a task force was to bring new voices to the table, not oftentimes, like every organization I'm sure we all know, oftentimes we bring the same people to the table, we talk about the same problems, and we come up with the same solution. And this idea was to bring new voices that we hadn't heard, voices from the foundations, voices from people who worked, who were connected to associations but not paid by those associations, people from our communities who could think and do in different ways. So that will bring us, that's an overview of the budget, and I'm sure that everyone in this room knows that on any one of these subjects, I could speak for hours, and not only would I want to speak for hours, I would want to speak for hours, and I'm just trying to give you an overview. So I want to give you of legislation and how I look at it and what we do. I also want to give you an overview on the issue of the budget. So is it 8 o'clock yet? So it's 8 o'clock. So I want to say, if you could flip through the budget things. So Dova and I will take 2 minutes on this. So I think I started a few minutes late, right, Ann? So on the budget, Dover is receiving more money this year in the local aid money that's available. We are receiving more money in Chapter 70, which is the education money. We receive our special education circuit breaker money depending on the number of students in the town. That's not a static number that I'm doing that. And on the budget, I have a list of things that I carefully monitor and watch in the budget and work hard on that. One of the things is money came back to the town of Dover for their work on energy, and I congratulate them for doing that. But I'm going to keep my word to you. I'm going to go to the questions, and if there are no questions, I'll go back to the presentation. Thank you. Laura, if you would come and share the microphone. And if you would just say your name and stand up so your neighbors can hear you.
Okay, is this on?
Yeah, hold it close.
Hold it close.
How about that?
I'll speak up.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
For the wonderful presentation. Very impressive and inspiring.
Thank you.
So much of what you work on has affected my family and me directly. So I really appreciate it. I also appreciate the wonderful legislative aid, Laura. I had the pleasure of meeting Laura a couple of months ago, Housing Day at the State House, and we talked about the housing bond bill.
Yes.
I've been involved in affordable housing professionally for a long time, in many different capacities. And I think we need this more than ever. And we've always needed this kind of financial support. But given the affordable housing shortage and the housing problem in the Commonwealth and the absence of federal leadership on this issue, it's more important than ever. And I think that the bill is moving in the House this week, maybe. And so any support that we can provide for that would be greatly appreciated by many people. I also spoke, I don't know, maybe I should just speak up probably. I also spoke with Laura about the climate change legislation, which we talked last week. And a package of bills, all of which currently, many environmental bills, as you know, are filed, but this is an emergency package that's been selected by a coalition. And I think I've talked already with some people here, and the environmental issues and climate change seem to be on the mind of some people. So I just wanted to reinsert my contact with Laura on that subject.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. My name was Joy Conway.
Joy.
34 Meadowbrook Road in Newark.
So I'm hoping you were able to hear Joy. Were you able to hear Joy? Can you hear the microphone? Is this microphone?
Only when you use it.
Only when I use it. Okay, so Joy wanted to speak about the issue on housing. You know, a major issue across the Commonwealth. We're hearing a lot of discussions from the governor, from Mayor Walsh in the city of Boston on the issue of housing. As the chair of the Joint Committee on Elder Affairs, it is one of the primary overwhelming needs of older adults in the Commonwealth. And in fact, the housing bond bill is moving as we speak. And I expect to vote on it probably by the end of February. What you have to know about a bond bill is an authorization. There's two pieces, right? One is an authorization and the other is appropriation. The authorization says, yes, you can have that money. The appropriation is, here's the money. You never get to here's the money until someone says yes. So the authorization is important, but it's not money on the table. So when we look at that housing bond bill, I want everyone to be mindful about what that's going to look like and what we might need going forward. In this district, we do have housing needs, and particularly the people in Dover should be thoughtful about what's happening at the Medfield State Hospital property and what that's going to mean around housing issues. The second piece you talked around was the energy issue. So I talked about Dover's work on the solar energy, incredibly good work that Dover is doing. Energy is one of those areas where I would look at a whole series of bills and be able to find a bill that I could sponsor that would resonate with the people, my constituents, who are concerned about this issue. I have done that. I meet with the League of Women Voters in Needham that's very strong, very active. Energy is one of their top priorities. I have also met with an interfaith group. Some people are from Dover, an interfaith group that is dealing with the energy issues. So I have a very strong commitment to how to deal with energy going forward. My commitment is mirrored by my colleagues. Energy is a major issue for the Massachusetts legislature and how we move forward. We're never going to move forward fast enough to satisfy some people, but we are never going to stop at where we are presently. Laura, I'm going to ask you just to do the best you can with the microphone, just in hopes that somebody will be able to use it. Okay?
I don't need a phone. That's okay.
Are you sure? Talk really loud.
Okay.
So for the television, that room is the room for the television. So we want to make sure we're talking loud enough for that.
My name is Maureen Dilch. I'm on the board of the Council on Aging. My question is, every town in Massachusetts has a Council on Aging. Does the state mandate that every town should have a Council on Aging?
So I'll tell you, Maureen, in my experience, there's 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts. There are not 351 councils on aging, but there is very close to that. And what I found is it is the very best vehicle. You know, the councils on aging do things that are visible and things that are not visible. So the visible things that you'll see a council on aging do is around programming and events. But the invisible things that the council on aging does that many people don't know is the support they give to older adults, the importance of diminishing isolation for older adults, the counseling that happens that is both oftentimes financial counseling, because we all know that there are major decisions that people are making as they enter their Medicare ages and insurance issues that are rapidly changing, but also around mental health issues and what that kind of support can look like. The highest rate of suicide, I'm deeply committed to the issue of suicide prevention, and Massachusetts is another area where Massachusetts leads. Massachusetts put $4.3 million every year into suicide prevention. And we think about our young people a lot when we think about suicide prevention. The highest rate of suicide is among older white men, right? That mental health support and counseling can make a major difference in suicide prevention, a major difference in polysubstance use. And so all of those functions are vital. So to any town or municipality that doesn't have a council on aging, it is a major gap in the services to their population. And I will find out for you, Maureen, if in fact, if there is a mandate. And if there's not a mandate, there certainly is a moral obligation, I believe.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, come on, Denise, you know I don't need that.
There he is, finally.
Jerry Clark, I'm Chair of the Board of Health. Denise, very quick question. BQ4 required, according to my reading, not just a vote in the town election, but actually a warrant article to preclude the establishment of a marijuana establishment. Now, Dover did have the vote, but we did not have the warrant article. And I'm wondering whether in either 3776, 3818, that are both before the legislature right now, there will be correcting language. I mean, I recognize that it's kind of unlikely that someone's going to be setting up a marijuana establishment here in Dover. But as I read the current law from BQ4, we did not prevent the establishment of such an enterprise here in Dover because we didn't have the warrant article. And I'm curious your thoughts on that.
So, Jerry, I have to be very honest with you and tell you that I would have to check that criteria. But I'll tell you what my understanding was. My understanding was that we wanted to have the opportunity, this local autonomy, was for local municipalities to be able to opt out. That criteria that it had to be a vote of the Board of Selectmen as well as a warrant article was seen as a barrier. And I believe that it's going to be enough of a vote of your local Board of Selectmen. But I would defer to our chair who's sitting right here. Of course.
And I'm glad that you brought it up. We will be bringing this back to the town meeting in May.
So there will be a warrant article on that to correct the omission.
It's interesting because a negative vote in a different kind of government would have allowed a board, a governing board, to go ahead and simply mirror the vote of the people. But because our government is actually the people themselves at our town meeting, then indeed that's why it's coming back for everyone this year.
Yeah, that's been a discussion topic within the Mass Health Officers Association, and that's why I raise it, because, as I say, for those who don't know what BQ4, ballot question 4, which created the marijuana use for recreational use, it was very cutesy written that when it came to a town as opposed to a city, you actually needed the town meeting to negate the establishment.
So, Jerry, this is a good example of a way I could share with people how I weigh in on something, right? So as your legislator, I do not have superhuman powers in which I can necessarily stop a bill from happening. But I can weigh in very carefully on aspects of a bill that I think are important to my constituents. And I do that pretty actively and advocate pretty strongly. When the legislature received back the referendum on the marijuana issue, I was a very strong proponent of this local autonomy. I was a voice for a district that had voted against the marijuana. I was able to meet with the chairman. I then weighed in as we were going to conference committee with the leadership of the House. And that language that we see reflected there is not the result of my work alone, but my work in conjunction with colleagues that agreed with me. But those voices made a difference in that final language that we saw. And over again, I want people to know that as I'm looking at great big bills, the criminal justice bill, right, that moved through the House, that is, I believe that's almost 3,000 lines of language. The way I weighed in on that bill was with the things that I knew from my own experience and from the expertise of my committee and my committee staff. So I weighed in on the issues of solitary confinement, on the issues of medication that would be given in the jails, on the issues of suicide prevention and training, and on the issue of protection and training of correctional officers. All of that I had experience with. I didn't weigh in on every aspect of that bill, but in the areas that I thought were important, I did research. We wrote memos. They were shared with the chairman of the committee. They were shared with the leadership of the House. And that's kind of an organic way that something moves. So I can't always stop something that we want, but I can often enhance it and strengthen it so it reflects more the values of the district I represent. And that takes a little bit of finesse to understand when a bill is moving, who's moving the bill, who will listen, how you get your voice heard, what mode of communication works best. And, I'm confident that in major bills that we're seeing moving, that this district's voice has been heard. Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Yeah, I won't pretend anyone might work, so.
Anybody who's been in the meeting knows my voice. My name is Jeff Merrill, and let me start by, commending you for all the good work that you do.
Thank you, Jim.
However, my question has nothing to do with it.
Okay.
And my question is focused on just what you've heard on one key issue.
Okay.
It's not a state issue per se. It's the issue of the state versus the federal government. There's been a recent tax act that is now being working through the system that puts a cap on the federal tax treatment toward the state and local taxes. I'm sure, given the recency, nothing's really happened per se at the state level. I would just like to hear what your thoughts are as to what people have said. I hope it isn't a bill that will take 5 or 11 years to get through. But, given that there's this now barrier between Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, and California, amongst others, it is of concern in terms of how affluent towns can handle their property taxes, and if there is a solution that other states would use, then Massachusetts has been investigating.
So this is a very, very important question, because, it strikes at the heart of many of the things we value most about Massachusetts, right? Is our ability to raise revenue, to have the quality of life we want to have in this Commonwealth, provide the services that we think are needed, right? So directly, you are referring to the issue related to our ability to deduct the taxes on real estate that we have on our mortgages, right? The most reassuring thing I can tell you is, no, there is not an action that has already been proposed in the legislature. There is a hearing, a public hearing by the Joint Committee on Revenue next Tuesday, in which they are inviting all of the stakeholders and any individual who wants to weigh this issue to come to the public hearing. So Massachusetts is starting that discussion. There are 20 states in the nation that do not automatically adopt the federal law as related to taxes. Massachusetts is one of those states. So we are going to have to figure out step by step what this is going to mean to us and what the impact is going to be. So on issues smaller than the real estate mortgage deduction, right, there are going to be impacts. On a major issue like that, there is going to have to be a lot of very serious thinking about what that means to people, how we are going to be able to allow the revenue that is needed for the Commonwealth to continue to obtain that revenue, and how we will protect the people in the process. This is an issue that goes to the heart of who we are and what we want to look at for the future. Because the truth is, if you can no longer deduct your real estate mortgage taxes in the town of Dover, moving forward to raise property taxes will be an overwhelming burden for people. And if we can't look at what the town itself needs and how we can apply that, we're not going to be able to continue to prosper and to grow our communities and keep them strong. So I don't have that answer for you today. I want you to know that discussion is starting in earnest on Tuesday, and I was really heartened to hear that. In fact, the Commissioner of the Department of Revenue will be testifying at that hearing on Tuesday. Anyone who wants more details on that hearing, where it is, what time it is, just contact my office by email or by phone, and we'll get that information to you right away.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I share your concern. And to the very core of my being, I share your concern.
Well, it's an interesting issue because it isn't something that the state has to pay for, but it impacts each of us, and it also impacts, as you say correctly, the ability of a town like Dover to determine its property tax base and where it's going to spend its money and how it's going to spend its money.
So in my world, one of the most dangerous things that happens is legislation that has unintended consequences. You know, we've got a problem, we're looking for a solution, we think we've come up with this great idea, you implement it, and then things that you hadn't envisioned happen because of that. I would like to think that it is an unintended consequence, but nevertheless a consequence we should prepare for, that this could starve communities like Dover and a commonwealth like Massachusetts. Hi.
Candace Sullivan, 100 High Street, Dover. So I know that substance abuse and mental health are very close to your heart and to the work that you do. And my question is, as far as mental health and our local police department, what type of work have you done with them as far as that?
So the question was what issue of mental health is, and in my relationship with town officials and with particularly the Dover Police Department, what kind of work we have done on that. So actually, I want to commend you all. Chief McGowan is an extraordinary police chief. You may know that he is now the president of the Norfolk Police Chiefs Association. So all the police chiefs from Norfolk County, I have dealt with him on issues particularly related to community policing. And community policing is a principle in which your local police believe that they are partners with the community. That you may know that one of the major issues in the town of Dover, the town of Needham, the town of Medfield, and the 351 towns in this Commonwealth is mental health now. When I prepare for the budget, I go to the department heads in the towns I represent. I go to the head of the health department in Needham and I say, what's the biggest issue? He goes, mental health. It's all mental health now, Denise. And I'm like, yes. So I go to the fire department. Now this is what you need. You need a fire truck, you need support on equipment, you need more training, you need this, what do you need, right? And he says to me, it's all mental health now, Denise. It's all mental health. And I'm like, whoa, right? And then I think, well, of course, these are the first responders, these are the folks going on. You go to our police chief, and I go to your police chief, Chief McGowan. What is the biggest issue? And it's mental health. So what we are seeing is that these issues go across all ages, all socioeconomic status. It's related to stigma and our inability to openly and authentically discuss the issues of mental health with each other. It goes to the issues of parity, where we don't pay the same for mental health services as we pay for physical services or medical services. It goes to the issue of what is happening today with this quality substance epidemic, and I am trying to call it that and not just opioid, because we're no longer just talking about opioids. Now we're talking about synthetic fentanyl. You know, we had 2,000 people who died of an overdose in the last calendar year. We had 1,500 people who died from alcohol at the same time. You know, we need to be talking about a lot of different substances. Your chief sits on the Dover-Sherburne, and help me with the SPAN. SPAN stands for Dover-Sherburne Substance Prevention Network. Okay, excuse me for all my acronyms floating around in my head, right? That is a very active board that's working out of the Dover-Sherburne High School. He works in conjunction with them. He has approached me around innovative ways we could deal with people in the community about discarding medication. I can say to you unequivocally that your chief is on top of the mental health issues and wants to be a productive, positive partner in that. And I have great confidence in that, and it's a pleasure working with him. We've all got so much work to do, though, and we're trying to do the work at the same time we're trying to learn about the issue. At the same time, the issue is changing right in front of our very eyes. But a very good partnership.
Wendy Bornstein, Dover. I know in Needham, I spoke to you last week, we were doing the program with facing history, facing ourselves to be more diverse, inclusion type program. Is there anything, have you talked to Dover, Denfield, whether it's something similar, or could you talk about that?
So in Needham, particularly last fall, in all 3 towns that I represented, times were very unsettling, and there was a great concern about not just the subjects that we were talking about, but the way that people were talking to each other. So in fact, in Needham, we wanted to bring in facing history, facing yourselves at a community level, and I was working with the town manager and the board of selectmen. But facing history, facing ourselves is actually an organization out of Newton, and so many people wanted to work with them that they couldn't come into the town and do that work. But what we have done is we are trying very hard to unite the many voices in the town. There are 7 strong organizations in the town of Needham that are trying to deal with the issues, particularly around about how we actually talk to each other about issues. You know, it is unfair to think that we're ever all going to agree on issues. You know, it is unfair for me to hope that you're going to support everything that I'm doing. You know, but if we could understand how we're approaching issues and what the value is that's in place and how we're doing that. So I continue to do that work. I haven't been asked by Dover to do that kind of work. I am ready to do that. When I talk about being very respectful about boundaries, I want you to know how deeply committed I am to my communities, but it is very clear to me that I want to serve my communities. I'm not in the business of telling my communities what to do. So Wendy, if you're working with an organization that is looking for some input or would like to knit together, it would be wise if we could knit Needham, Dover, and Medfield together, because what's happening to the people that are working on this issue is they're getting exhausted. There's so many events, there's so many meetings, there's so many this. If we could work together and streamline the work that we're doing and then bring 100 people to an event instead of bringing 15 people here and 7 people over here, that would make a major difference. But just say the word, and I would very much want to work on this issue. It is the way we're going to move into the future. You know, we have to be able to talk to each other respectfully and figure out how we're going to do this. I want to share something with you. So I was at the fair in Needham, and this woman came up to me, and she actually was shaking, physically shaking. And she said to me, I came because I thought you'd be here, and I want to know, will we be all right? Will we be all right? And I looked at her and I said, yes, we will be all right if people stay connected to each other, if we work on issues that are important to us. I said, don't work on every issue, work on some issue, and stay connected to people that care about the things that you care about. And yes, we will be all right. But our greatest strength is each other. Our greatest strength.
Thank you.
Any other question? So it is 8:25. Any other question? Okay. I want you to know that my contact information is here. I hope people who have contacted the office feel like they're getting a very responsive staff and respectful staff that's responding. I hope you feel like you know that I want to hear your voice. I can only be as good as a representative as the information that you give me so that I can represent you. And I want you to know that truly, I believe in good government. I believe that the ability to represent this community and the communities of Needham and Medfield is a calling for me, and that I want to make sure that at the time I finish my service, whatever that is, that we will all believe that this district has been made stronger and more whole because of that work. And I need you all to do that. And I want to commend and thank each and every one of you for coming out tonight. This is a wonderful, wonderful showing, and I deeply appreciate it. Thank you.